ingredients. I've got, this is only for 2, so if you need to cook for more, just double it up. I've got 2 sausages per person. I've got 2 plump. These are medium quality, decent quality sausages. You can go for cheaper ones or you can go for more expensive ones. That's entirely up to you. In addition to that, I've got an onion to make an onion gravy with. I've got some, these are baking potatoes. I find them much better for making mashed potatoes because the consistency is rather floury and it's really good, but I'll show you how to do that. And also into the mashed potatoes will go some single cream and some butter, but you can leave out the single cream if you wish and just use milk. So it's very simple, this one. Let's just get on and do it, shall we? So there we are. I've got the potatoes chopped up rather small pieces and into cold water. Always boil potatoes from cold. And I'm going to drop into that a little pinch of salt just to get that going. And then we'll bring them to the boil and cook them until they're soft. Meanwhile, let's look at the sausages. I'm going to focus on the frying pan. Okay, get your pan quite hot. Drop in some oil, a couple of tablespoons of oil. Let that get nice and hot. That clanging in the background, that was me banging into my new Space Saver rack. It's given me a lot more room in the kitchen, and you'll probably see it in some future video. Or maybe even this one, who knows. Once you've got those in, turn them down to about half of your heat range and just let them cook slowly, because we don't want to really rush this. We just want to cook them slowly and keep turning them. Make sure they're cooked evenly all the way through and all over. And for another flip. So the secret is to just cook them over a fairly low heat, and that way you don't burn them on the outside and have raw sausage in the middle. I think the old term bangers comes from the old days when they used to fiddle the ingredients on them and put in more bread than meat, and of course they would bloat up and pop. And I've had that described to me from German sources as well, where they said the old ersatz bangers, the old ersatz sausages, would burst all too readily. But fortunately these days we've got some decent quality sausages, and these are the ones I like to like. I can get cheaper ones, but I don't particularly think I'm doing myself any favours there. You can ultimately cheat yourself, can't you? You know. So I'm going to let them go for another minute or so, and then I'm going to take them out and start the gravy. Okay, they're looking rather nice now, so I'll take those off, and into all that delicious oil now goes our onions. Into that and give it a stir. Now you can chop your onions how you like, you can shred them, you can cut them lengthways into slices. It's up to you how you want to cut your onions. I fancy them done this way today because they'll be a bit easier to manage. So I want to leave them at that heat, which is about half my available heat, and I just want them to cook down a little bit now. I want them to cook down until they're translucent and slightly browning. So we'll come back to you when that's ready. Okay guys, if you want to help me out, please like, share, subscribe, and let your friends know about it. Also, there is now a PayPal subscriber link down below in the show more section, and there's also a subscribe star link there if you want to help me out. Thanks in advance, and meanwhile the thumbs up help an awful lot. Thank you very much. Okay, that's starting to brown a little around the edges, nice and translucent, the onions. So into that I want to put about a tablespoon of flour, because we're going to make the gravy. So I'll get that stirred in. Have a look, maybe just a little bit more, tablespoon and a half perhaps, because I want a lot of gravy for this, because we're going to make the gravy quite thick, which is the way it should be. So I'm just going to let that fry slowly for a minute, just to take the rawness out of the flour. So at this point I'm going to start adding liquid. Now I'm using beef stock, or you can use hot water and a stock cube. That's basically what I've done here, I've just made it up. So I'm going to add in about a teacup full and get that stirring. Add a bit more. And as it heats up, it will thicken again. If you like, you can always add a bit of gravy brown into it, but I prefer it like this myself. A bit of gravy browning, maybe a bit of dark soy sauce if you want it darker. It depends on where you're from. You probably like your gravy light or dark. So I've turned the heat up a couple of notches now, because we've introduced a liquid to the pan and we've reduced the heat in the pan. So I'm just going to turn it up a little and get that back to bubbling. And as it thickens again, you need to add a bit more stock. I've used one stock cube, which is about 450 millilitres, which is round about an American pint. It's around about 16 ounces. So I'm adding beef stock. You can add whichever stock you like. If you're making this with vegetarian or vegan sausages, you can of course use a vegetarian stock. See, now that's coming back to the bubble and starting to thicken again. And I'm putting the rest of that stock in. So that's 450 ml, about 16 fluid ounces of stock. And that's for 4 sausages serving 2 people. So I stir that stock in well and then allow it to come back to a fairly rapid boil, at which time I add my sausages back in. You see how much gravy there is now in relation to the sausages, so what you're doing is you're spreading that flavour out, making this a very economical dish, because that gets, all that lovely gravy gets soaked up by your mashed potatoes. Now once you've got to this stage, you can turn your heat right down as lowest it'll do, put the lid on and let that simmer for a few minutes. You can let that go for a good 20 minutes and your sausages will be nice and tender and succulent and ready to serve. Meanwhile, let's get back on with the potatoes. Okay, the potatoes are cooked nice and soft. I'm now going to drain those and start mashing them. One thing I like to do when I've drained my potatoes is just put a bit of heat under them just for a couple of minutes and let them steam. So there we are, steaming nicely, and what I want to do now is just get them mashed up and broken up. I forget who taught me that one. It's quite a long time ago I learned that, to really steam your potatoes, and it helps them fluff up nicely and mash lighter. Once they're broken up, I bring in the next weapon in my arsenal, my trusty potato masher. And then you've got to do this really thoroughly in order to get the best spuds. So the first thing you need to think about is the spud. It needs to be a very floury potato, and I find baking potatoes and Morris Piper's really good, as long as it's a floury potato. And you get that really well mashed up, and when you've mashed it up really well, you mash it up again. Make sure you test a bit. That's really good. Now we come to the next bit, and that's where you need to put in a blob of butter. So whatever you think a good blob is, maybe about that much, good generous blob of butter goes in. And the reason we do that is because it makes it all the more fattening and excessive, and it annoys the food police, which is a bonus. I'm just going to mash that in, and then we bring along the next tool in our arsenal, and that is a whisk. So I'm going to start whisking it, and it's at this point that I add in a little bit of cream. So maybe a couple of tablespoons of cream, and that's single cream, but it doesn't matter, any cream you've got will do. And then you whisk it really, really lightly. And there you go, we've just transformed a simple bangers and mash into something rather sublime. Yes, we can use humble ingredients, but it's how we treat them that makes the difference between a cheap meal and a bargain banquet. And massive thanks to Mr. Paul and to Bradley Bennett for their help in bringing you this video. Thanks guys, really appreciate it. So you can see they're simmering away nicely. I just want to get in there with the taste. That's pretty good. Salt wise it's excellent. The stock cube was fairly salty anyway, so I'm not going to adjust salt, but I will adjust pepper. And again, I like a lot. You use as much as you want to. It's your dinner. There we go, so plenty of pepper in that, and now let's get it served up. Okay, the first order of business is to get a nice pile of this lovely mash, lovely fluffy mash on there. I think we need a little bit more, don't you? Because a little just isn't enough. So we get some of that on. The next thing I want is a few, I've cooked some green beans which go rather well with this. So I just cook those in salted water. They're homegrown, they are. They're off my own garden. And of course, la pièce de résistance. the gorgeous sausages. Let's get those on. One on. And two on. And remember, we need lots of that gorgeous gravy, that onion gravy. That really is something quite special. Bangers and mash. Now anyone can fry up some sausages and get some instant onion gravy and daub it on, but you know, with a little extra application you can turn it into something rather sublime. Right, the next thing you're going to want to see is a taste test. Alright, here we have it. Taste test, semi-mukbang. I'm going to go through one of them sausages, and you see it's easily cut with a fork. Get plenty of gravy on it, a little bit of the mash. Excuse me, I'm having a moment. Mash on its own with lots of gravy. That is British comfort food at its level best, really. It's simple, but it's wonderful. You just got to do it. Rather pleased with that.